January 27, 1959. 9 of the most experienced hikers in the Soviet Union marched into the Ural Mountains, fully equipped, fully trained, and completely confident. 12 days later, rescuers found their tent violently cut open from the inside. Their boots were still inside. Their coats were still inside. Their only chance of surviving the night was still inside. Outside, in a storm where temperatures had collapsed to -40 degrees, 9 sets of footprints walked calmly away into the darkness. Some of those footprints had no shoes. Whatever they saw, whatever they heard, whatever walked into that camp that night, it was so horrifying that dying in the frozen dark felt like the safer choice. 66 years of investigations, declassified files, and scientific studies have never produced a single answer that explains everything. Tonight, we find out why.
In 1959, a group of 10 hikers traveled into Russia's Ural Mountains. Only one person who turned back early ever returned.
It's not the first time the deaths of 9 students in Russia's Ural Mountains has gone viral.
On the 5th of May 1959, 2 months after the first bodies were discovered, the 4 remaining bodies are found.
In the cold Russian winter of 1959, 9 students set out on a cross-country skiing trip in the Ural Mountains.
The other hikers' bodies were found later with strange injuries. 2 were missing eyes, 1 missing a tongue.
In 1959, a group of 10 hikers headed out into Russia's Ural Mountains. Only one person who turned back early ever returned.
Their discovery shocks the rescuers.
The tent had been cut from the inside, as if they needed to get out of there.
A Geiger counter is usually a military item, not a civilian one, but he'd obviously been instructed.
January 27, 1959. Ivdel, a forgotten town on the western edge of the Ural Mountains, where the last paved road ends and the wilderness begins. 10 young hikers stood in the freezing morning air, tightening their pack straps, checking their compasses, and doing what people do before a great adventure. They laughed. These were not reckless thrill-seekers chasing danger for the story. Every person in that group held the highest expedition certification the Soviet Union issued. They were the best. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was 23 years old, an engineering student, quiet, methodical, and trusted completely by every person who had ever hiked beside him. He had spent 4 months designing this route to Mount Otorten, every camp position, every supply margin, every weather contingency mapped out in precise detail. Among the group was Yuri Yudin, 21 years old. He had waited months for this expedition, and standing at that trailhead, he felt like the luckiest person alive. 2 days in, his joints gave out. Severe inflammation, the kind of pain that doesn't negotiate. He had no choice but to turn back. His friends gathered around him, said their goodbyes, squeezed his shoulder, told him they would see him in 2 weeks. He stood in the snow and watched them disappear, one by one, into the tree line. That image, his friends walking away, growing smaller, then gone, stayed with Yuri Yudin for the rest of his life. Because he was the only one who ever came back. The group pushed deeper into the mountains for 5 more days, fighting storms, logging their progress, writing entries in a shared diary that passed from hand to hand each evening. The last entry was dated February 1st, 1959. One of them had written a joke about the wind. Within hours of that entry, something happened at their campsite on the slope of a mountain locals called 𝐶𝐻𝐿𝐻, a name that translates, with grim precision, to Dead Mountain. All 9 of them tore through the tent wall from the inside and fled into the dark. No boots, no coats, -40 degrees. When their bodies were recovered weeks later, the forensic findings made experienced investigators go quiet. 3 of the hikers had internal injuries, shattered ribs, a fractured skull that required a force comparable to a full-speed car collision. Not one of them had a single visible wound on their skin. And on the clothing of several bodies, Soviet scientists detected something that had no business being on a hiking expedition in the Ural Mountains. Radiation. The government reviewed every report, collected every file, and delivered their official conclusion to the victims' families in 6 words: an unknown, compelling natural force. Then they sealed the case, classified the documents, and buried the truth for decades. 6 words, 9 bodies, and a mountain that has never stopped asking to be understood. Tonight we go back. We go through every declassified document, every forensic report, every piece of evidence that has surfaced in 66 years of searching. And this time, we are not leaving that mountain without answers. On January 27, 1959, 10 young adventurers, all experienced hikers and skiers, set out from Ivdel in the bitterly cold Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. Their goal was to traverse one of the toughest winter trails in existence and reach Mount Atorton, a remote peak deep in the snow-covered wilderness. It was meant to be a bold, triumphant journey into nature's unforgiving heart, but it would end in one of the most perplexing and chilling mysteries in history. Led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, the group was rigorous in preparation and careful in planning. These weren't amateurs. This was a group with strong skills, high-level certification in winter trekking, and the confidence that comes from prior challenging excursions. They departed with enthusiasm, smiles and cameras capturing their first steps into the frozen wild. But even early into the trek, nature began to show its harsh hand. Snowstorms blew in from the north, temperatures dropped rapidly, and winds began to howl along the slopes. Just a day after departing, one member of the team, Yuri Yudin, struggled with deteriorating health. Severe rheumatism, coupled with a congenital heart issue, forced him to turn back. He became the only member of the group to survive this tragic story. Little did he know, his friends were heading straight toward disaster. As the remaining 9 pushed onward, the weather deteriorated further. The hiker diaries and photographs recovered later showed joyful moments at first. Laughter in the snow, confident planning, and team spirit. But those upbeat records faded by late January, replaced by increasingly stark terrain and ferocious winds. They were following a meticulously charted route approved back in Sverdlovsk, yet as they climbed, the map seemed to slip from them. They veered off course without realizing it. They arrived on January 31st at a highland area, tired yet determined. Their plan was simple: cross the pass and set up camp on the leeward side, sheltered from the worst winds. But as snow piled and visibility dropped, they miscalculated. Instead of retreating to a safer, forested area, they established their camp near the top of a slope on 𝐶𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿, the mountain that would soon be known as Dead Mountain. Russian police have reopened a 60-year-old investigation into the mysterious deaths of 9 students on a cross-country ski trip. The mystery includes a sliced open tent, bodies dressed in underwear in the snow, traces of radiation, and a victim missing a tongue. That decision, to camp on an exposed slope instead of more protected ground, has haunted experts for decades. Many experts believe fatigue, pride, or overconfidence pushed them to stay higher, closer to the peak they had pushed so hard to reach. Others question whether something unsettled them without their knowledge. But whatever the reason, their choice of campsite would soon become deadly. That night, February 1st, the conditions were brutal. Snow was falling heavily, the wind slammed against the canvas of their tent, and temperatures plunged far below what even seasoned hikers could comfortably endure. But nothing about that night was comfortable, and what happened next would forever defy easy explanation. Inside the flickering warmth of their shared shelter, they should have felt safe, insulated from the storm, yet something drove them to abandon it. When the search party finally found the bodies of the missing hikers in the Ural Mountains, the scene was so horrifying and so confounding that it inspired conspiracy theories for decades. Temperatures dropped as low as 30 degrees. Hikers were found partially clothed with strange injuries and curious levels of radiation. When rescuers finally discovered the camp weeks later, on February 26th, they found the tent slashed open from the inside. as if the hikers had fled under unimaginable terror. Their boots, coats, and equipment were left behind, scattered, untouched, as if in panic rather than rational preparation for a trek into the blizzard. And then, tracks, haunting tracks, showed them walking away from the tent, not running. Barefoot or only in socks, they trudged into the silent, ice-cold darkness. This was not the behavior of people calmly evacuating. This was panic, confusion, possibly fear of something beyond human interpretation. But why would 9 experienced hikers, who understood the deadly risks of the Ural winter, abandon their only shelter without shoes, coats, or supplies? Why would they choose to face near-death cold rather than seek safer shelter close by? These questions only deepen as the next chapter of their story unfolds, and what searchers found just beyond the slope only intensified the mystery. As night fell on February 1st, 1959, the 9 hikers had made what would become the most consequential decision of their lives. They pitched their tent near the top of the barren slope on 𝐂𝐴𝐿, not far from where they had spent the day. The darkness was closing in, and the storm outside showed no mercy. Winds shrieked like banshees, snowflakes whipped into blinding sheets, and temperatures plunged below 30 degrees. Yet despite all of that, they remained on that exposed slope, and what happened next would forever haunt the world. The tent the hikers set up that night should have been their shelter, their fortress against the unforgiving winter. But something, whatever it was, forced the group into a terrifying exodus in the dead of night. The next morning would reveal an abandoned nightmare. When the search party found the tent, it was slashed open and abandoned. Rescuers found the hikers' belongings inside, seemingly untouched. Boots neatly placed, clothes folded, and partially eaten food on plates, indicating they left suddenly and without preparation. The discovery was baffling. The tent was not buried by an avalanche. The snow was uneven and rough, blown by the wind. Yet it was cut open from the inside, as if the 9 hikers had fled their shelter in an uncontrollable panic. Their cameras, diaries, and personal gear, even extra boots, remained inside. Tracks in the snow showed the group had not sprinted in fear, but walked together, despite the bitter cold. Some were barefoot, some only in socks, others still wearing light underwear. They made their way downhill toward the forest, around 1.5 km, nearly a mile from where their tent stood. Searchers found the first 2 bodies, Igor Dyatlov and Yuri Krivonischenko, near a small fire beneath a cedar tree, clothing nearly absent and signs of desperate attempts to keep warm. There, beneath a tall cedar tree, the first tragedy was discovered. The bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko were found lying in the snow next to the remains of a meager fire. They were almost naked, wearing only socks and underwear, their bodies showing signs of severe cold exposure. One autopsy later noted burns on Krivonischenko's hands and even a piece of flesh in his mouth, possibly from him biting his own hand in the frenzy of freezing. But these 2 were just the beginning. A little farther along the frozen path, 3 more bodies were discovered. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, the only female hiker besides Dubinina, and Rustam Slobodin were found lying in the snow. Their positions and clothing suggested they tried to make their way back to the tent, but the cold became too much for them. For weeks, snowfall and brutal terrain hid the rest of the group's remains until May 1959, when warmer weather began to expose the snow beneath. At the bottom of a ravine about 75 min of 250 𝐸 from the cedar tree, 4 more bodies were found, buried deep under snow and ice. These 4, Ludmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolevatov, and Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, were in a very different state from the first 5. Unlike their fellow hikers, they were fully dressed, but in clothes that weren't their own, suggesting that some garments had been shared or stripped off in a desperate fight for warmth. Their injuries were even more shocking. While the first 5 had died primarily from hypothermia, the bodies shutting down in the cold, the last 4 suffered fatal trauma. Some had broken ribs and skull fractures, injuries so violent they were compared to those from a high-impact car collision, yet with no external wounds typical of such trauma. This discovery deepened the mystery far beyond a simple tragedy caused by winter weather. Doctors found that 2 of these hikers had eyes missing, and one, Dubinina, was even missing her tongue, a detail that would fuel theories, speculation, and wild speculation for decades afterward. What made the injuries even more bizarre was that the bodies around them showed no signs of attack by other humans, no tracks to indicate a violent altercation, and no animal prints nearby. No one could explain how such trauma could occur in a world of ice and snow without some unknown force at play. And still, the footprints in the snow showed no evidence of any other party besides the hikers themselves. All 9 had left their tent that night, together, and all 9 had met their end on that frozen slope with no definitive cause. Some died trying to build a fire and keep warm. Others died attempting to return to their tent. Some perished further away, as if searching for refuge. And the mystery only deepens when you consider that no rescuers found any sign of an external human or animal presence anywhere near the campsite. No attackers, no tracks, no signs of struggle. What possible force could drive 9 competent, experienced hikers, seasoned in cold survival and mountain travel, to tear open their shelter from the inside, flee into a blizzard, and get scattered across the snow like lost souls? The scene the search party discovered would baffle experts for decades, raising questions that would launch theories ranging from brutally logical to bizarrely supernatural. And the strange injuries found on those last 4 hikers? That would be a puzzle the world would never forget. After days of silence and worry, the search parties finally reached the Dyatlov group's campsite in late February 1959, and what they discovered was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. On February 26th, rescuers climbed the frozen slope of 𝐶𝐻𝐿 and uncovered the first chilling clue. The hiker's tent was cut open from the inside, not from the outside. The entrance was jagged, ragged, as if the occupants had ripped their way out in fear, not walked out calmly through the door. Their belongings, shoes, warm clothing, equipment, were left behind neatly, almost untouched. This wasn't a planned departure, it was panic. Rescuers discovered the tent slashed from within, with backpacks, boots, and equipment left behind, suggesting the hikers fled without preparation. The footprints left behind were haunting, some showing bare feet, others only socks, and even a single boot worn by one person. These tracks led downhill into the dark forest, disappearing into the cold void. This wasn't normal movement, it was disoriented retreat, a group of people abandoning their only shelter in temperatures that could kill them in minutes. When the rescuers followed the footprints, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonischenko and Yuri Doroshenko, near a small fire beneath a cedar tree. Both were nearly naked, their lives ended in the cold snow. They seemed to have built a fire in desperation, trying to stay alive with nothing but the elements against them. A little farther down the slope, 3 more bodies were discovered. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin, lying in positions suggesting they were trying to make their way back up toward the tent, perhaps seeking shelter or warmth. All were showing early signs of fatal exposure to the harsh winter conditions. In the snowy Ural wilderness, the bodies of the hikers were found in strange, scattered locations, some near a tree with a small fire, others appearing to head back toward the tent. But the real shock didn't surface until May 1959, when the snow melted enough to reveal 4 more bodies buried deep in a ravine. These hikers were better dressed than the first 5, but their condition was far worse. Severe injuries, broken ribs, head trauma, and skull fractures told a story more violent than simple hypothermia. Some of these injuries were so intense that they bore resemblance to car crash level force, despite no signs of struggle or external attackers being found. This strange and horrific discovery sparked widespread reporting and media attention around the world as news outlets began to share the bizarre details of an investigation that seemed to make less sense with every new piece of evidence. Months after the initial search, 4 hikers were found buried under snow with severe injuries that could not easily be explained by hypothermia alone. With some hikers barely clothed, some found near a fire they likely built themselves, and others showing traumatic injuries inconsistent with known natural forces, the scene became a puzzle of inconceivable horror. Officials would later attribute the deaths to exposure and hypothermia, but the evidence was already pointing toward a mystery that no single explanation seemed capable of satisfying. Cases like this are what turn a tragic news story into a worldwide obsession, one that will echo through history and challenge researchers for decades to come. Once the chilling discoveries were made, investigators and experts around the world began searching for explanations. Some theories were grounded in science, others stretched into conspiracy territory, but each sought to make sense of the harrowing evidence left behind in the snow. One of the most serious proposals came from Russian authorities themselves. After decades of speculation, a formal investigation reopened in 2019 and concluded that a slab avalanche was likely the primary cause of the hikers' terrifying flight from their tent. According to this explanation, a heavy layer of snow slipped down over their camp in the dead of night, forcing them to cut their way out and flee in panic, without time to put on shoes or coats. The force of the snow could also explain the severe injuries some of the hikers suffered. Scientists and investigators now propose that a slab avalanche, a shift of dense snow, may have struck the hikers' camp hours after they set the tent, forcing them to flee in panic. However, the avalanche explanation isn't universally accepted. Many experts argue that the slope where the hikers camped wasn't steep enough for a classic avalanche, and the lack of typical avalanche debris around the tent raises questions. For this reason, some researchers turned to cutting-edge scientific simulations that show how a slab, a heavy layer of snow lying on a weak layer underneath, could have broken loose slowly yet forcefully enough to collapse part of the tent without leaving obvious surface traces. Swiss and Russian scientists modeled a slab avalanche that could strike the tent with the force of a vehicle, possibly explaining the unexplained trauma some hikers suffered. Even with avalanche theories, there's still major controversy. Some details, like why the hikers left a warm tent barefoot and in socks, don't fully align with what a typical avalanche would cause. For that reason, another major category of explanations centers around potential military activity. During the height of the Cold War, the Ural region was a testing ground for weapons and missile technology. Some researchers have pointed to military parachute mines or the accidental release of toxic rocket fuel components that could have startled the hikers with loud noises, bright lights, or chemical irritation, potentially forcing them from their tent in disorientation. This speculation isn't entirely unsupported. At the time of the tragedy, Soviet forces were known to conduct exercises and tests in Siberia's expansive, remote territories. These activities could have produced strange lights, explosions, or atmospheric effects that startled the hikers, though no direct military records confirm this. Meanwhile, other theories, ranging from katabatic winds, gravity-driven shifts, infrasound-induced panic, and even UFO sightings or extraterrestrial involvement, have been proposed by researchers and enthusiasts alike. While these ideas generate intense debate, most scientists discount them due to lack of evidence. Over the decades, a staggering range of theories has emerged, from strong katabatic winds to UFOs, each trying to explain the hikers' panicked escape and bizarre injuries. Despite decades of scrutiny and even a reopened investigation by Russian prosecutors, no single explanation satisfies all. The evidence. Some elements, like the strange injuries and lack of typical avalanche debris, still defy a unified scientific account. Others argue that a combination of natural forces, fear, and misfortune could have led to the tragic outcome. But whatever the theory, natural disaster, military accident, or something even stranger, each hypothesis highlights just how complex and perplexing this tragedy was. None fully explains both the hikers' behavior and the odd injuries that followed. Even today, researchers and experts continue to debate the evidence, test new hypotheses, and uncover small clues that might one day help solve what remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the 20th century. When the bodies of the Dyatlov hikers were finally recovered and examined in 1959, Soviet investigators attributed the deaths to a compelling natural force. It was a vague, non-specific phrase that satisfied bureaucratic requirements but satisfied no one's curiosity. Families, scientists, and adventurers left with more questions than answers. From the very beginning, the world wanted more than just an official conclusion. It wanted the truth. The wounds, the missing body parts, and the bizarre flight from the tent simply didn't add up. In 2019, nearly 6 decades after the tragedy, the Russian Prosecutor General's office reopened the investigation, hoping to finally bring closure. Prosecutors narrowed their focus to a few natural possibilities, including avalanche, hurricane winds, and snow slab movement, deliberately dismissing conspiracy theories and speculation about foreign forces or military involvement. In 2019, the Russian Prosecutor General's office officially reopened the Dyatlov Pass investigation, looking at natural causes and dismissing many wild theories. In July 2020, the office released its updated conclusion: the hikers were likely forced out of their tent by a snow event, possibly an avalanche, and died of hypothermia and related injuries. Prosecutor Andrei Kuryakov explained that the extreme weather conditions, blizzard winds, low visibility, and deep cold gave the group no realistic chance to survive once they left their shelter. Russian prosecutors concluded that the hikers probably died of hypothermia and exposure, with avalanche-driven panic the most plausible explanation. But even this conclusion has not silenced the world's fascination or its doubts. Scientists have continued to analyze terrain, snow data, and historical weather patterns, and some remain convinced that no classic avalanche ever occurred at the site. Instead, they propose a slab avalanche, a slow, dense snow shift, or a combination of natural factors that might better explain the hikers' sudden flight from their tent. Despite these efforts, skeptics still question whether officials have truly resolved the case. Families of the hikers and independent researchers have long criticized the official conclusions, arguing that the puzzle's unusual elements, like missing body parts and unexplained injuries, haven't been fully accounted for by natural causes alone. There's also a deeper emotional legacy. To this day, books, documentaries, podcasts, and research groups continue to examine every available thread of evidence. Organizations like the Dyatlov Group Memorial Foundation and dedicated sleuths around the world keep the story alive through anniversary expeditions, updated terrain analyses, and relentless questioning of bureaucratic answers. Despite reopening the investigation and an official explanation, researchers, families, and enthusiasts continue to debate the Dyatlov Pass case. No single answer satisfies all evidence. Even recently, media outlets and researchers have revisited the case with intriguing new theories. From failed rocket tests to chemical fog hazards and other catastrophic explanations that aim to tie together the stray fragments of evidence that traditional hypotheses struggle to unify. Yet for all the science, speculation, and fresh investigation, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains unfinished history, a haunting riddle at the edge of human endurance. Every theory answers part of the story but leaves another question open. Was it nature's fury, human error, or an event we still cannot fully explain? That is what keeps millions captivated. That is why Dyatlov Pass isn't just a case file. It's a mystery that continues to echo through time. The Dyatlov Pass case has haunted the world for over 6 decades, and despite numerous investigations and scientific studies, the true cause of the hikers' deaths remains as elusive as the snow that swallowed them. No matter how many theories have emerged, whether it's a natural avalanche, secret military experiments, or unexplained forces, none fully explain the horror that occurred on that mountain. After years of silence, Russian authorities finally gave their official conclusion in 2019, a slab avalanche caused by heavy snow and high winds. But for many, this theory doesn't explain the full picture. The bizarre injuries, the missing body parts, and the desperate, unexplainable flight from the tent all point to something far more complex, something beyond just an avalanche. While the scientific community continues to debate, the mystery lives on, and every year, more theories are brought forward, more expeditions are made, and more questions are asked. In fact, the search for answers continues to captivate people's imaginations, sparking new investigations and documentaries to this day. For the families of the hikers, and for those fascinated by the unknown, this case is far from over. The truth remains buried in the snow, waiting to be uncovered. As we wrap up the story of the Dyatlov Pass, we are left with more questions than answers. Were these 9 hikers simply the victims of an unpredictable avalanche, or did something far darker drive them to their tragic end? Maybe we'll never know. But one thing is certain, the Dyatlov Pass mystery will never be forgotten. It stands as a testament to the unsolved mysteries that continue to haunt us, and it serves as a reminder of the dangerous unknowns that still exist in our world. This case has some extensive research and is very time-taking, so we could need to cover every angle of the case. If you're interested in reading the complete investigation, I will add resource links in the description and you can read from there. If you're captivated by this chilling mystery and want to uncover more unsolved cases like the Dyatlov Pass, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Join us on this journey into the unknown, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss out on future deep dives into chilling stories from around the world. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know what you think happened on that fateful night. Was it an avalanche, a military test, or something far more terrifying? Let us know your theories and theories about unsolved mysteries you want us to cover next.